The curse of shadows. Snow covered everything in sight. The cold wind cut through like knives, freezing blood in the veins. All around, there was nothing but a vast expanse of white snow and a gray, overcast sky. Perched on the slope of a rocky hill stood a massive ancient house. Its blackened wooden walls looked like they had witnessed countless winters, and its windows seemed to stare back, as if alive. Michael, Sophia, Rose, and James, 4 friends, walked through the snow-covered path leading to the house. Their breaths came out in visible puffs, and their footsteps crunched on the frozen ground. Their mission was simple: spend the night inside the infamous Shadow House. This house wasn't ordinary. Locals whispered that it was cursed. Over the years, those who dared to enter its doors were never seen again. "Do we really have to walk all the way?" Sophia complained, shivering as the wind bit through her jacket. Michael chuckled. The cars parked down the hill, the icy slopes too dangerous for driving. "Relax, it's just a house." As they approached the house, an eerie silence enveloped them. The only sound was their footsteps on the icy path. The air grew heavier, colder, as if the house itself was drawing them in. The door was ajar. James stopped at the threshold. "Are we really doing this?" Without hesitation, Michael pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior was pitch black. The air smelled damp, a mix of rotting wood and something metallic. Sophia switched on her flashlight and scanned the room. The wooden floor was scratched and marked, with faint reddish stains here and there. Rose pointed at a patch near the corner. "Is that blood?" James snorted. "Don't be ridiculous, it's probably just rust or something." They moved cautiously from room to room. Each space seemed untouched for decades, yet there was an unsettling sense of presence, as if someone had just left moments ago. In one room, they found a table and a few chairs. A partially melted candle sat on the table, surrounded by old wax drippings. Beneath it was a small, yellowed piece of paper. Michael picked it up and read aloud. "If you don't leave now, the snow will bury you." Sophia froze. "This isn't funny anymore. We should leave." Michael laughed. "It's just an old note. Someone trying to scare us, probably. Don't let it get to you." But as they continued exploring, a sudden slam made them jump. The door had closed on its own. The sound echoed through the house, followed by a faint, rhythmic tapping, like footsteps. Rose gasped. "Who's there?" No one answered. The air grew colder, so cold that their breath began to crystallize. A whisper floated through the room, soft yet chilling. "Leave now. You don't belong here." Sophia grabbed Michael's arm. "I told you this was a bad idea." Michael tried to open the door they came through, but it wouldn't budge. It felt as if it was glued shut, or worse, as if the house itself had locked them in. The wind outside howled louder, and snow began to fall more heavily. The windows frosted over, cutting off the little light that remained. They retreated to the dining room where they huddled together, lighting the old candle for warmth. "This isn't an adventure," Rose muttered. "This is hell." Michael tried to reassure them. "We'll figure it out. It's just an old house. Don't panic." But before he could say more, the candle flame flickered violently and went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A sound came from the corner, a slow, deliberate creak. A shadowy figure emerged, its form barely distinguishable from the surrounding darkness. Its glowing red eyes pierced through the black. James backed away, his voice trembling. "What is that?" The figure circled them, its presence suffocating. Then it spoke, its voice deep and guttural. "You dared to enter my domain. Now you will pay the price." Panic overtook them. They ran for the front door, but every exit was blocked, as though the walls had shifted to trap them inside. Their screams echoed through the house, but no one outside could hear. By morning, the snow had stopped, leaving a quiet, pristine landscape. A group of locals passing by noticed 4 sets of footprints leading to the There were no footprints coming back. The house remained standing, silent and foreboding, waiting for its next visitors. Those who entered never returned, and the snow-covered ground kept their secrets buried forever. The snowstorm intensified as the hours ticked by. Inside the shadow house, the air was thick with dread. The four friends were trapped, huddled together in the dining room. The faint glow of their flashlight batteries was their only source of light. "Do you hear that?" Rose whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind outside. A faint sound echoed through the house. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. They seemed to be coming from above. Michael tightened his grip on the flashlight. "It's probably just the old wood creaking from the cold." James shook his head. "That's not creaking. Someone's walking up there." Sophia's breathing quickened. "We have to get out of here. Let's break a window or something." Michael stood up, determined. "Okay, let's check the windows in the main hall. Stay close." As they moved toward the main hall, the footsteps upstairs grew louder, matching the rhythm of their own. The sound wasn't random. It was following them. "Who's up there?" Michael shouted, his voice echoing through the dark, empty house. There was no reply. Instead, the footsteps stopped abruptly. They reached the main hall. The windows were frosted over, and the frames looked warped from age. Michael swung the flashlight toward one, inspecting it. "We'll try breaking this. Grab something heavy." James picked up an old chair and swung it at the window with all his strength. The glass didn't shatter. Instead, the chair splintered as if it had hit solid stone. "What the hell?" James yelled, backing away. "It's like the house doesn't want us to leave," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from upstairs, a loud, dragging noise began. It sounded like something heavy being pulled across the floor. "What is that?" Rose asked, clutching Sophia's arm. Michael looked up toward the staircase. "We need to see what's going on. Whatever it is, it's not going to stop." Sophia grabbed his arm. "Are you insane? We need to stay together and stay down here." Michael shook her off. "If we don't figure out what's happening, we're never getting out of here." Against their better judgment, they all followed Michael up the creaking staircase. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the house itself was pulling them down. When they reached the second floor, the dragging sound stopped. They stood in a long, dimly lit hallway. Faint moonlight filtered through a crack in the ceiling, casting eerie shadows on the walls. There were several doors lining the hallway. One of them was slightly ajar. "That door wasn't open before," James muttered. "Let's check it," Michael said, moving forward. Sophia grabbed his wrist. "Don't, please." Michael hesitated, but then pushed the door open. Inside was a bedroom. The bed was covered in dust, the sheets torn and yellowed with age. A large, full-length mirror stood in one corner of the room. At first glance, the room appeared empty, but then they noticed the mirror. It was fogged up, as if someone had recently breathed on it. Slowly, words began to form on the glass, written by an unseen hand. "You should have left when you had the chance." Rose let out a sharp scream, and the door behind them slammed shut. The sound of a lock clicking echoed through the room. The mirror began to vibrate violently, the glass warping and distorting. Then, without warning, a shadowy figure emerged from within it. Its elongated form dripped with darkness, and its red eyes burned like embers. "Run!" Michael shouted, but there was nowhere to go. The figure lunged at them, its limbs unnaturally long and clawed. It moved with inhuman speed, dragging Rose toward the mirror. She screamed, her nails clawing at the wooden floor as she was pulled closer. "Help me!" she cried. Michael and James grabbed her arms, pulling with all their strength. The figure hissed, its voice like 1,000 whispers. "She belongs to me now." With one final pull, Rose was yanked into the mirror, her screams fading into silence. The glass returned to its normal state, showing only their horrified reflections. James pounded on the mirror, shouting her name. Sophia collapsed to the floor, sobbing. "We have to get out of here," Michael said, his voice shaking. "Now." But as they turned to leave, they realized the door was gone. In its place was a solid wall. The house had trapped them again, and now it was only a matter of time before it claimed the rest. The snowfall intensified, and with it, a suffocating silence enveloped the shadow house. Michael, Sophia, James, and Rose sat together on the cold, dark floor, their only source of light being a dim, flickering flashlight. "This house isn't going to let us live," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling with fear. "We'll try to break a window," Michael said, standing up. But James stopped him. "Don't you remember? We've tried before. The windows won't break. This house wants to trap us." At that moment, a heavy dragging sound echoed from above. The noise was so unnatural that they all froze. "Not again," Rose whispered. Michael rushed towards the stairs. "We need to see what it is. We can't just sit here." "Are you insane?" James shouted. "What will it change if we investigate?" "Nothing will change. We have to know the truth," Michael said firmly, taking a step toward the stairs. The four of them slowly ascended the stairs. Each step felt like they were being pulled deeper into something cold and sinister. When they reached the second floor, they found a door slightly ajar at the end of the hall. "That door," James whispered, "was it always open?" No one responded. Michael slowly pushed the door open. The room inside was oddly pristine, with a large mirror standing in the corner. Its glass was fogged, as though someone had just breathed on it. Suddenly, words began to appear on the mirror. "Leave now. Time is running out." Rose screamed and the door slammed shut with a force that sent a shudder through the walls. The lock clicked into place on its own. "This can't be real," James muttered. The glass of the mirror began to tremble, and something began to emerge from it. A shadowy figure, tall and monstrous, with glowing red eyes, slowly took form. "Your turn now," the figure said in a low, menacing voice. "Run!" Michael shouted. But there was nowhere to run. The shadow seized Rose, dragging her toward the mirror. Rose screamed, "Save me!" Michael and James grabbed her, trying to pull her back, but their strength faltered. "It's taking her," Sophia screamed. "We can't do anything." With a final, desperate pull, Rose was sucked into the mirror. Her screams were cut off, and the room fell silent again. "This isn't over," Michael said slowly, his voice full of resolve. "We can't leave her like this. We have to go after her." Sophia protested. "You don't know what's in there. You can't survive." Ignoring her, Michael stepped toward the mirror. He placed his hand on the glass, and instantly, a freezing sensation shot through his arm. He was pulled into the mirror. James and Sophia hesitated, but, unable to leave him behind, followed him. On the other side of the mirror, they found themselves in a world of pure darkness and fog. The ground beneath them seemed to move, as if alive. In the distance, they could hear Rose's cries. "Over there," Michael shouted, pointing toward a shadowy figure trapped in the fog. They rushed toward it, and as they got closer, they saw that it was Rose, struggling and bound by the shadowy figure. "You can't escape," the shadow growled. "You belong here now, forever." Michael picked up a metal pipe from the ground and swung it toward the shadow. "Let her go." The shadow's laughter echoed around them. "How will you defeat me? I am the house. I am the darkness. You cannot destroy me." They all looked at each other, understanding that there was no escape without confronting this evil. They needed to fight back, even if it seemed impossible. Sophia spotted something in the distance, strange symbols carved into the ground. "That's it. We have to read them." As she began to chant the strange words, the ground trembled. The shadow let out a terrifying scream, its form weakening. "You can't destroy me," it roared. But Sophia didn't stop. She continued reading, her voice rising, and finally the shadow was pulled back toward the symbols. With one last shriek, the shadow vanished into the ground, and everything fell silent. The return. They found themselves back in the real world, standing outside the shadow house, which was now quiet and still. The snow fell gently around them, and the house loomed in the distance, its windows dark.
Please like
"Are
and
we
subscribe
free?"
Horror and Channel.
Rose whispered, looking around. Michael glanced back at the house. It stood silent, but something in the air felt different. They were free, for now. As they walked away, no one spoke. They knew the truth. They had survived this time, but the house wasn't finished with them. Not yet. In the distance, the lights inside the shadow house flickered to life, casting an eerie red glow.